Morning all. Today we're going to do a short video on how to do the health check / benchmarking. So it's pretty simple. We just go into Crashzone, sign out, don't need to be there. On the front page we've got tools up here. We've got to get some data obviously. So benchmarking, we click on that. It brings up a series of questions. So just first thing, this has been done from outside Crashzone's login. So anybody can get onto this anytime and put anything they want in there. We can't save it. Crashzone can't use it. Nobody can get it. It's totally anonymous. So from a privacy point of view, yeah, you've got nothing to worry about. So the intention with this program is to put in the key data and measure your business against everything that's going on in the world. And what other shops are doing, and then you can see whether there's how you're going really well or how you're going really bad, and we'll get to that bit after we put the data in. So for the purposes of this one, we've got all the questions down the side here, and we just fill in the answers. So from the survey, I know that most of the shops that Crashzone have got 2 in a panel shop, they got 2 in a paint shop, actually probably 1.5 in a paint shop, the 0.5 being an apprentice. So then in the office, it's normally one person who runs around doing everything. So what you can do there, you go 0.5 tab, 0.5 tab, oops, tab. Detailers, well, that's normally the painter, so we'll just go 0.25. Bookkeepers, Mrs. comes in a couple of times a week or whatever, 0.25. So the total staff is for the support staff only. So with that, we've got 1.5 in total. So that gives us our normal, average, boring Crashzone shop, which has got about 5 staff. So obviously every shop will be different, so you just put in your own numbers. Then we go down to the financials. So I know from the feedback from the survey that most shops are around the 80k a month. So we'll just put that in as a gap. I don't know what their panel to paint sales breakdown is from the survey. You will know that yourself via tracking and whatever method you use for your breakdown. But generally speaking, if it's an 80k shop, there'll be about 20k in panel in sales. That'll be how much you've quoted out. The paint will be about the same. Your parts will be about 40 grand, which goes back to the old story about half and half. Repair costs, your parts cost. If you're quoting 40 grand worth of parts, let's call it a 20% discount, 35k's what it's cost you for your parts. Your wages, the $1 million thing. So generally speaking, if you've got 2 staff up here in the panel shop, they're going to cost you 2 grand each, 4 grand a week, 4 weeks, 16,000. So we'll just throw that in as a ballpark figure here. Not saying it's right or they're worth it. That's another topic. In the paint, because you've got one tradie, so there's 8 grand, and apprentices calling 4 grand for the month. So that's 12 grand. So we put that in. Support staff, mate. You're going to get nothing. You know the story. You work your ring off and get nothing. But let's say the boss is on 12k a month, or for the support staff for the 1.5, so husband and wife type of a scenario, 12 grand. Rent for a shed that'll hold 5 people, probably 4 grand. You tell me. Just move this little thing here over the other side. Your liquid paint costs. So we know that it's about 1.5 to 2% of your total sales, but we also know that it's about 15% of your paint sales. So by the time you add your consumables onto it, because it's too hard to break up, you're probably looking at 20% of your paint labour or your paint sales. So if you're doing $20,000 worth of work, 20% of that's going to be your paint. So let's call that 4 grand for the sake of the number. Number of vehicles invoiced, again, average repair costs are around that, say 3 grand. So I'll call it 4 because it's easier for me to write down at the moment. Let's call it 20 vehicles for the month. So when you've got all your fields completed, you simply hit submit. Nothing changes, except now down the bottom, you've got this little chart, and that's the one you want to see. And it tells you the good and the bad of your business. So just throwing in those rough numbers that I did, knowing that they're going to look ugly in several areas, but let's have a look through them. What it tells me is that my on the first line, my panel labour cost over panel sales is 80%. So it should be about 40%. So what we're basically saying here is that if you do a $100 panel job, the wages should be 40. But in this instance, with this model that I put in, the wages are 80. So does that mean a bloke's getting paid too much? Well, you can sort that one out. Or it means you haven't quoted enough, one way or the other. So what would you do about it? Well, you can have a look at what's somebody's value, whether your quotes can be, and get a second opinion on how you're quoting, maybe, all those things. It may well be that, hey, again, I'm only here to say that most shops run at 40%. So if you're at 80, you'd look at it. The next one is not really relevant. It's got to do with the panel component of your quote. And again, an industry average is that if there's $100 smash, there'll be 50 for parts, 25 for panel, 25 for paint, which is all I wrote in up there. So you can't really change that because that's got to do with what turns up at your door. So you have really no control over that line, the second line. The same with the fourth and fifth lines. One's got to do with paint, one's got to do with your parts. But if you're doing stuff that's no parts or a lot of resto where you're manufacturing parts, it's really not going to take into account. So lines 2, 4, and 5, you just obliterate them. They don't count. Back up at the paint labour cost, it's again like the panel one where your paint cost for your labour should be around 40%. In this instance, it was 60%. The difference between it and the panel, if we go back up the top, we'll see that the wages for panel was 16 grand and the wages for paint was 12. Because they're the apprentice, which flows back up to the top here, where the paint technicians were at 1.5 and the panel techs, we had 2 tradies. Maybe one way to make the panel look better would be to drop a tradie and replace him with a kid. Drop your wages. But again, that's the sort of thing that'll shops will, if they know about it, they can do something about it. So in this instance, though, again, the industry says about 40% of the money's for all the wages. In this model, we had 60%, so too high again. Again, 2 things you do. 1, you drop your labour down. 2, you increase your quotes. Or you know that the boys are getting well paid and you're making profit on your parts or whatever and you don't really care. There's a lot of shops out there where the labour component is a break even and their profits in their parts. And if you're one of the lucky shops that's doing prestige where a 20% markup on an $8,000 Mercedes bonnet is good money, then you don't really care what the labour's doing. Back at the benchmarking and how it works, the health check. So the parts, we've touched on the parts, and the parts markup. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, especially with some of the manufacturers, but if you set out to achieve 30% of markup on your parts, it gives you something to aim for. Right? Some people will do it easy. They'll have really good suppliers, and they'll be in a part of the industry where they can do that markup. In this particular model, we're at 14% markup, so that's not overly exciting because that markup's where your money comes from to pay for your admin in real terms. So again, it's a way of measuring it. That number there, that 14%, simply came from the buy cost of the parts at 35 grand and the sell parts was 40 grand. So that's where it came from. The liquid paint cost is a percentage of your paint sales. Again, it says here 18% is the goal. I don't necessarily believe that. I think there's been a bit of a creep over the years, and it's probably closer to 24%. That will include your paint and all your consumables. So if you buy everything from, I don't know, someone like Jeff O's in Melbourne, if you buy everything from the one place, you'll find that bill will be around 20%, or it should be. You hope to be. Again, if it's at 45%, then have we got wastage? Have we got theft? Or again, have we got underquoting? So once you know your number, pat yourself on the back, or you go, yeah, I need to look at that, and that holler out to me if you want to. But I think a lot of the time you can have a look at that yourself. And if you do this monthly for the entire thing, once you start focusing on the areas that are in the orange, you'll be amazed how simply by paying attention to it, it'll improve. So that's the liquid paint sales. Support wages, always a contentious one. I hate the word admin or non-productive, because your people in the office work just as hard, they try just as hard, they achieve goals. So this is where we just call them support. So the support is everybody that's not on the invoice, for want of a better description. So people, your detailers, your tow truck drivers, your parts people, your production managers, your quality controllers, your estimators, all those people, they are part of your support wages. But that total cost should be 10%. So if you do 80,000 a month, that support wages should be 8,000 maximum. And it's amazing how lean we can run. You can run to 5% if you try. Just means people have got to be on point and doing the right thing. Again, this just highlights where you're at. So with the entry of this data here, if you've got an estimator or a manager, but he's also the painter, and just say half panel or half paint and half office, then his wage of $2,000 might be $1,000 for paint. You'd allocate $1,000 for paint and $1,000 for office. So you're in the support. So don't be scared to split up wages. If you've got a bloke that's a floater and a labourer, put him in as half and half. There's no rules here. You do it your way. The thing I would stress is that you do it the same every month. As you do this report every month, you measure things the same, so you can compare like for like. You can see where your improvements are, or if things are going the other way, at least you'll know about it. Back down here, the support wages. So in this instance, with this model, our support wages is a bit high. That's what it is. This one's the vehicles invoice per support staff per month. So if you've got rid of, in this instance, we delivered 20 cars, and we had 1.5 people did it, those 20 cars, which averaged out at 13 vehicles per person. Now, 20 is, you're up and running to do 20, but 13's a bit lax. You expect to see 15 to 18 without too much effort per support person per month. So that one's about, there's a balancing act with it, because if you have them where they're doing 22 and above, you normally find they're cutting corners to do it, and that can be detrimental to your bottom line. But 13 means people are on Facebook more than me, so that's not a good sign. Next line down, support wages as a percentage of total. This 30%. So for the last 50 years, all shops, all areas, the rule of thumb has been your wages are a third panel, third paint, third admin support. And that's what our numbers ended up being there. I have run businesses where you've got 40% of your wages are panel, 40% paint, and only 20 in the office. Again, when you get below that 20%, the people in the office, they'll do it, but they're scrambling, and then they're missing things. So they're not actually doing a good job. But I also know of other shops where that support percentage is 50%, because you've got people to give customers a cuddle, and they've got detailers, and they've got people driving and picking up and doing valet and 100 other things. If the money's in your parts or in somewhere else in your business, and you can afford to have that sort of customer service and that number of people, good on you. But as a rule of thumb, yeah, again, watch it every month, just see where it's going. And your rent's an interesting one. It's the Australian Tax Office, who know more about our industry than we do, because they have all that data every year. They believe that your rent is about 8 to 10% of your sales. So in this instance, we had 80 grand's worth of sales, and I'd put the rent in at 4 grand. So I'd, normally I suppose, looking at that as 5%, so maybe, that 4 grand, yeah, if your rent's only 4 grand and you're doing 80 grand a month, good on you. That's where you're picking up a few thousand for yourself. So, but I also know of shops where it's, that rent is 15%, and the rent is 12 grand for 80 grand's worth of work. So again, every shop will be different. This is just a way of converting what your gut instincts are into numbers, and then with those numbers you can look at them and see where you fit. If you're screaming orange frequently in that area, maybe it's worth looking at. The final bit with this little video is, this information you can't save. The only way you can save it is the old control print and have a hard copy. It's not saved anywhere. Crashzone can't save it. I can't save it. Nobody can. It's just there. It's for you. But if you want to keep it, you've got to go Control P or screenshot it, or however you capture information when you can't control save, because it won't save. That was a deliberate action when we built the program 10 years ago. So that is a short video. I don't know how long that's taken, but whatever it is, that was my goal, was just to give you a run through. If there's any of it you need to know more about, please give me a PM, ring me, whatever, or watch the video again if you can put up with my voice. Thanks, folks.